we get started again on the topic, I just wanted to go over a couple of things.
Friday evening?
The referencing. So, in your notes, if you had a chance to, bless you. Thank you. I was waiting for that. I just wanted to go over with the referencing. So in your notes, as you go through, you'll see that above certain topics, there is a little bracket that says AS or CS or something like that, right? So there is a separate sheet that I had sent you guys that has about referencing. Right, there you go. So in that, it basically indicates which one of the classical references we've used. So where you can actually, please, if you have the time, I would really, really encourage you to go back to the classical text and find the same reference, even though it's the same information, but read it from the text. Okay, and what you can also do is, if you have the time, read the other things that are around that. Because sometimes what that does is that brings up your own ideas and your own understanding. And sometimes it gives you another aha moment. So it's really good to kind of develop this habit of reading from the classical text. So how many of you guys have Charaka Samhita? Oh, great, perfect. Okay. So most of the referencing are from Charaka Samhita. Some of them are from Ashtanga Hridaya, which is the one over there. And I haven't really used too much of Sushruta because it's good. It's just sometimes it's a little bit hard to find the references in there. And I'm more used to this because I like it. So just a very brief introduction, which you guys probably already know, but I just wanted to tell you a little bit more anyway, since we do deal with a lot of the classical texts. Everything that I teach you, everything is from the classical text. So if you feel that something I'm saying doesn't seem right, or you do have questions, and you're more than welcome to question, please do question me. But I would suggest you go back to the classical text and read it and see what idea forms in your mind as you read that, okay? Okay. So Charaka Samhita, of course, this is one of the Brihatrays, and it is the oldest text of Ayurveda. Okay, originally it was Agnivesha Samhita, which is Agnivesha is the original author of this book, and then it was redone, sort of polished up a little bit by Charaka Acharya, and then it got renamed as Charaka Samhita. So this one is supposed to be somewhere around 5,000 years old. We're not sure exactly the age, but the closest number that we have to it is somewhere around 5,000 years, okay? Somewhere around, not completely exactly sure of the number, but guesstimating. The one that came after, so this book is, one thing that's special about Charaka Samhita is, it is one of the most detailed texts with explaining almost all concepts of Ayurveda. The other ones are detailed, but this actually gives you the most in concepts. So in the concepts, the theories of Ayurveda, you find all of that in this text. That's why it is the go-to, the most authoritative text on Ayurveda. Its speciality is in general medicine. So you find a lot of information about general medicine, sort of related disorders, which general medicine for Ayurveda is basically everything. Okay. So Kaya Chikitsa is the main, Kaya Chikitsa is general medicine. And in that, it basically describes every kind of disorder you can think of. After this came Sushruta Samhita, which is a blue book. It's a nice little drawing of Sushruta. And the difference between this one and Charaka is that Sushruta, so Charaka was considered more of like a person who was a knowledgeable sage, didn't do like the really dirty nitty-gritty stuff. And so he describes things according to logic and inference and a lot of theories and understanding and how to understand disease. He was a philosopher. So a lot of aspects of the relationship and the correlation between the mind and the body and how these two interact and present disease, and how even from past lives or astrological impressions and all of that, how that can also affect the disease. All that Sharaka explains really well. Shushruta wanted to explain a little bit more in the physical realm, because what wasn't as detailedly explained in Charaka is the anatomy of the body. So Shushruta was the one who decided to do the nitty-gritty work. And he was the one who was first to describe about anatomical structures and different parts of the body. And he's also the person responsible for surgery. So what he did was he would collect cadavers, dead bodies. They would be immersed in a river. So it would be kept in a cage, and it'd be kept in a river of running water. That would be left for about 10 days or so. What happens is the bodies would swell, right? And then he would collect the bodies and then peel them off layer by layer. And that's how he was able to dissect and come up with different anatomical structures and actually be able to describe that. So that's why Shushrutta's anatomy may not always correlate exactly with today's anatomy, but it is fairly close. Some things, some numbers may be a little bit off, because like for instance, he described 7 layers of skin. And if the body swells and it's been sitting in water for 10 days, then yes, it may come off at 7 layers instead of.
That's where it came from.
Yes, so that's how he got 7 layers of skin. So like that, some of the numbers may be slightly different, but that's because considering the process of what he did in order to be able to explain anatomy was not going through a real living person, but using dead bodies, okay? So considering now what we know about putrefaction and the changes in the body after it dies, depending on how many days or how long he waited to do that or to collect that information, that's where there's a slight modification, okay? But that's the specialty of Shushruta, is that he does explain a lot of the diseases that are there in Charaka as well, but what is extra and what is the expertise of this book is anatomy as well as surgical procedures. Okay, so he's the one who's developed a lot of surgical procedures. The first one to develop surgical instruments, which a lot of his instruments that were described in this book are still the ones that we use today. They're the same shape, used for the same purpose. And also, Shushrutta's method of rhinoplasty is the exact same method that is used today. And this has been proven. They did a documentary on this through the Discovery Channel. So I will try to find that documentary and share it with you guys. But they found one of the original leaf samples, or the book that was written in the leaflets of Shushruta Samhita. And that's actually in Germany, by the way, not in India. And they found that the rhinoplasty procedure described in Shushruta Samhita is the exact same procedure that is practiced today. And they did a historical correlation of the different methods that were used over the years, and how they progressed to the same method, okay? Another reason why Shushruta concentrated a lot in surgery and marmas and anatomy was, at his time, was the time when there was a lot of changes and people migrating from different continents. There was also a lot of warfare. So they needed to be able to do surgeries and take out different foreign bodies that will go into a person if they are fighting in a war. So that's why he is known for Shalya Tantra. Shalya is a foreign object that goes into your body. Anything that's a foreign body, and anything that's a foreign object in your body is considered as a Shalya. Okay, so he described Shalya Tantra, which is you're using, the surgical instruments are also termed as Shalyas, because this is also a foreign body that goes into your body. So you use these instruments to remove those other foreign bodies, okay? That was another reason why he concentrated on that topic, and you find much more information about that in this textbook. Now, in the last textbook of the Brihadrayis is Ashtanga Sangraha and Ashtanga Hridaya, which again, a lot of people don't really explain this one, but it is actually 2 books that is written by what we consider or think is written by the same person, because the author is the same. So this is written by Vagbhata and that is written by Vagbhata. Okay? Now the difference is this one is not in, this is in a prose form, that one is in a more of like a poetic form, more in poetry as opposed to this. But they're both written by the same author, so therefore both are included in Brihadrayi. So originally people say Trayi means three, so it should be only three. However, it's not just three books, but it's also the three authors. So the three authors are Charaka Acharya, Sushruta Acharya, and Vagbhata Acharya. Okay? So Ashtanga Sangraha and Ashtanga Hridaya were both written around the same time. But there are differences in these texts. So Ashtanga Sangraha means it is a compilation or a concise, organized book about the 8 angas or the 8 limbs of Ayurveda. So there are 8 different limbs or 8 different specialities in Ayurveda, right? In that both of these texts have concised everything they have found in Charaka and Sushruta and put it into one very organized, very well put together book about the 8 different limbs of Ayurveda. So this is in a prose form. It's more like a conversation, more dictative. And Ashtanga Sangraha or Ashtanga Hridaya is the actual essence of this book. Okay, so you'll find a lot of some similarities, some things, like some verses are the exact same in this book and that book, written by the same person. Word for word, it's exactly the same. But there are differences. Some things are explained in detail more here, whereas it is the same content is there, but it's concise. So in order to, if you're starting off to learn Ayurveda, Ashtanga Hridaya is easy because it's explained in a very simple manner, right? But the only thing is, it has concised all the information that's in here. So if you don't understand that, you do still need to go back to the detailed version that is explained here, okay? So this is just a quick little tip about the classical text and why I will teach you from this. Now, eventually you will get comfortable enough to read this and to find the references. But the only thing about Charaka, why it's somewhat hard and a little bit of a challenge to read, is because things are spread out everywhere. They're not very well organized. So if you want an organized version from the beginning side, this one or that one is much easier because it's very well put together. It's, segregated according to chapters, segregated according to different limbs, and it's in a much more logical, easier order, okay? So if you go according to the chapter one by one, you read it all throughout, it should be a lot easier to understand. But then it's not going to be able to answer all your questions. Eventually, hopefully, you'll start getting a lot of questions because it's concise. So once you read the concise version, then you need to get more details. Then you can move on to Charaka. Because after that, if you read Charaka, Charaka gives you the details of it. It's the same thing like starting off with your AHC and now coming to the practitioner course. So you need the basics in order to understand the details. Okay? The same thing, we're going to go back to a lot of that, but now we're going to look at it in a different perspective. Okay? Okay, so what you see in the classical referencing, CS is Charaka Samhita. Okay, so that's the book. After the book is broken up into different sections. So you have Sutrasthana, which is the first section. So in your book, you have in the first volume, if you open the first page, under volume 1, they'll tell you which Thana that is. Okay? So if you want to find which section, like for instance, Sutra is SU, it'll tell you which Thana it is. Okay? So for instance, if that's too difficult to do, on the top of your book or on the side of your book, you can just write which Thana is there. So when you go to pick it up, Sutrasthana is in volume 1. In volume 2, the reason I didn't write volume 2 or volume 1, because not everybody follows the exact same version. Another reason why, volume 2 has 3 sthanas in it. Volume 2 has Nidana sthana, it has Vimana sthana, and it has Sharira sthana. And I think it also has Indriya sthana. It has 4 sthanas in it. Okay? And so from each section starts off with chapter 1. So that's the reason I can't write volume 2, chapter 1, or volume 2, chapter 3, because there are 4 different chapter 3s in there. Okay? That's the reason why. And another reason why this is the standardized method of referencing for Ayurvedic classical texts. So for instance, if you were to read some of the not so great English written articles on Ayurvedic research, but written from Indian researchers and Indian doctors, they also reference it the exact same way. So you can go back and look up what they're talking about from the classical text. Because all of us, we are not allowed to do any research without referencing from the classical text. That is our method of validation of what we're trying to do. The concept has to come from here. And then we do research or we do other different methods to basically look at how to prove what they're telling us. Because we know this actually does happen. We see it happening. We're just collecting numbers to show the percentage of what we know to be true and what we observe to be true. Okay? Okay. So that's the difference. And this is the one I wanted to introduce you to because for some reason, I don't know why, this book hasn't been introduced here. And it's such a good book. And it's really, really well written. And it's very easy to understand. And when in our first year, in my first year of BMS class, we had to study this whole book. So this also comes in 3 volumes. The first volume is Sutrasthana, which is usually basically the basics, talks about basic theory. So we had to study this whole book, okay? And even though it has 40 chapters and a little bit detailed, but it was really well written and very well organized. It gives you all the details, everything you need to know, okay? And that's organized. So if you're interested, this would be a good way to start. It may not always have all the references because this doesn't deal necessarily with specific diseases, okay? This does deal with basic concepts. So for instance, if you're doing a health counselor version of Ayurveda in India, this would be the health counselor version. This should be the health counselor version because it gives you the absolute fundamental theories of understanding Ayurveda. And then from here, if you go on to learning about disease, it becomes so much easier because you're like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, I can put this 2 and 2 together now. Otherwise, it's like, okay, so why does this happen? And then you have to go back again. And then you have to read back this, and then you have to learn it again. So this is usually the starting point. Okay. So that's just to let you know, so you'll be familiar with if you see these references, that they come up a lot in the notes. Of course, none of my notes are written without classical references. Yeah, there'll be some explanation, but for the most part, it's classical references that I've put together to make it easier for you to understand. So I've compiled from the different texts. Majority is from Charaka, but there is some other references like Ashtanga Hridaya or Shushruta or Ashtanga Sagraha, where the explanation may be a little bit better. Okay?
I'm sorry, I'm still confused. So when I look at CS is Saraka Samhita, then SU is Sutra.
Yes.
26.
Chapter 26.
Oh, that's Sutra. That's chapter 26.
Chapters 26, and then the verse
/
number.
86 to 101.
Yes. So
Okay, but you were saying that there's more than one chapter in.
In volume 2, there's more than one section. So, for instance, Sutrasthana is a section of Charaka Samhita. Chikitsasthana is a section on Chikitsa. Okay. And Chikitsasthana is spread out from volume 3 to 3, 4, 5. Yes. Which one is 6? No, 6 also, I think.
So SU in this case means Sutra.
Sutra is, yes. SU means Sutra. CHI means chikitsa, and that. Oh, I will give you. I think I didn't send it to you. The reference. There's a reference guide.
Oh, okay, I don't think I have.
Can I borrow somebody's for a second?
I've got one right here.
So there's a reference guide as to
Oh,
how
okay.
what each abbreviation means.
Excellent.
So for instance, this is Sutrasthana. So you have Charaka Samhita Sutrasthana chapter 28? I said
26.
26. So you go to chapter 26. And what was the shloka number?
80.
Oh, sorry, 86 to 101.
So you go from there, at the bottom, after each shloka and the English meaning, they have the numbers of the verse number. So you
Okay,
have verse number 80, 86, so here. 86 to 101. So everything that was written, it's written from here.
okay.
See, 86 to 101.
Thanks. I'm gonna get
Yes,
this.
I will send it to you. I'll
Okay,
send it,
great,
because there was some extra notes stuff
Yeah.
that I wrote out.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you, sorry.
You're welcome. So that's how you find it. So you can go directly to the textbook and you can find everything what was written. Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. So there's that, and then what was the other? The other one was about the transliteration. The other extra. So going back to our talk on. So does anyone have any questions so far? Feel free to ask questions, because I'm actually asking all 4 questions. Usually I do not ask questions, but I think questions are good. I was a question asker, that's all.
No,
And I used to ask a lot of questions. I didn't always get answers, and that would get me very frustrated. And then if I did not get answers, I would fall asleep in class. So, and then I'd get chalk thrown at me. So I would suggest you ask your questions, and I will try my best to answer. So please don't fall asleep in my class. Otherwise, it'd be like, it would be revenge for my unwanted actions or untimely actions. Okay. So we're talking about Vikrata Vikrati and how these signs and symptoms start off, okay? So this is basically what we kind of very quickly reviewed on the videos. And the reason I'm saying this again here is because this is really important when we start to look at signs and symptoms. So for instance, as we go through, we're going to start to see that there's a long list of signs and symptoms. Some of them seem very mild and some of them seem very severe. And sometimes it's given under just general signs and symptoms. So what you need to understand from that is which ones can present at which stage. They're not going to put it in order. Sometimes the classical text, they give you all of it. What can you expect generally? And what you're going to notice is if you find one of those particular signs and symptoms, you should be able to understand where it would fall in here, because you'll be able to tell according to the severity. Sometimes one symptom that seems like a very mild one, or it seems like a very, initial symptom, but has been going on for a very long time, indicates the chronicity of it, but even that is equally important, okay? And in each person, in each client, in each patient, it may present differently. So that's another reason why sometimes you may have all of the signs and symptoms present, or sometimes you may have only 1 or 2. Doesn't necessarily mean just because they have 1 or 2, they don't have the disease, okay? Or just because they have the 1 or 2, they have the disease, okay? Even that too is there. The reason why is how we're going to be able to differentiate between the person having the disease or not. Is it a sign or symptom of this, or is it a sign or symptom of this? Is it a sign or symptom that we can explain by this normal variation that we expect? Or is it a sign or symptom that is happening despite what is expected? So that's why it is either a normal abnormality or an abnormal abnormality. We don't call it disease if everybody has one. No, not necessarily. These are expected variations. So for instance, these would be like what is described under Ritucharya, or what is described under this particular, in the seasonal regiments, in the classical texts, in the seasonal regiments, they describe actually what happens during the seasons. So what do you expect? How is there the rise and fall? Now, in the classical text, they describe 6 seasons because in India you can observe 6 seasons. Of course, that's not restricted to, it doesn't mean that that concept doesn't apply here. What we do need to understand is what we expect, or what we notice the difference and change in seasons in the area that you live in. So for instance, in your place, the time period of winter may be very different than, say, here in New England, than, say, in New York, than definitely in Florida, or as opposed to Arizona. In a country this large, you have variations of climate and seasonal time durations from place to place. So you need to be able to understand the concept that they're describing, understand the gunas, and then be able to figure out what is appropriate for the place where you're living in. Okay? So it is not a fixed. One thing you also to keep in mind is that nothing in Ayurveda is ever completely stringent, that it has to be only this or it has to be only that. There are no lines. We are very fluid because it really depends. You know, the one thing you're going to hear forever, that for the rest of your life, when you hear talk about Ayurveda, is it always depends. And it does. It depends. It depends on these many factors. It depends on where you are. It depends on how old you are. It depends on who you are. It depends. And what we develop the skill of being able to identify what it depends means and how to interpret that. Okay?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I hope I can explain it enough to be able to ask my question. So you know how they say when you've had an imbalance for so long that your deha prakriti changes from what your prakriti was, you're now in the shape of a vikriti.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Am I making
Yes,
sense?
yes.
So if someone came in and you wouldn't know, of course, if they're how would you even begin classifying them where?
That's a good question, because that leads to the next point. That leads exactly to the next point. How do you classify? You classify according to dosha. Because that's what happens. And what typically happens is when you have a person who is in a vikrita vikriti stage, you can't necessarily go according to their prakriti and try to treat their prakriti. First of all, you can't treat someone's prakriti. That is their prakriti. That is their nature. You're not treating it, you're managing it. Okay? This is a state where you need to treat it. You need to intervene because it is something that intervened before that. An abnormal change happened. So this is the normal of what we expected. Somewhere along the line, some factor caused it to go in a different direction. And that's why you have this abnormal. This is the one that needs to be treated. Here, we're managing. So what you learned till now is how to manage a normal prakriti. But when you have a vikriti, the management is different. Because here it's treatment. It's not management. You're not managing the disease. You're trying to treat and negate this. You need to negate this. And whether we can or cannot negate it really determines, again, is determined by these factors and is determined by where along this line the person is at. So not everything can be treated in Ayurveda. Not everything is curable. Okay? So what determines whether it's curable or not is how strong is the causative factor. How strong is the disease? The one thing also we're going to learn is in disease, in our timeline, and we'll talk a little bit more. I have a visual for it in your slides. But in the timeline, you have say you have a causative factor, okay? You have some nidana here, like for instance, you're not eating on time, or you're eating something that suppresses your agni all the time, like yogurt. You eat yogurt for breakfast every day, okay? That's a common one. So you start off one day eating yogurt, not really too much of a difference. Second day you eat yogurt, you start to feel a little sluggish. Third day eat yogurt, then, you feel sluggish, but you go for a run and then you feel fine. Then the fourth day, you eat some more yogurt, and then, okay, it starts to build back up again. There are multiple factors that determine whether the reaction for this increases or decreases. And what helps to increase or progress the disease is it basically is adding to the strength of the disease, right? And that is known as the Roga Bala. What helps to cause the disease to regress, or what helps to negate that, is what actually helps to increase the Rogi Bala. So what that means is Roga is disease, Bala is strength. Rogi is the patient, and Bala is strength. So there are certain factors there also that will either increase the strength of the disease and causes it to progress and keep going and getting stronger. There are also factors that will help to work in the favor of the person, or the patient. And so what that will do is that will cause it to regress. It's like what we say, oh, we're building your immunity, or we're building up your strength. Okay? What we're doing actually is this. We're increasing the strength, the innate strength of the person. So we're helping to increase the Rogi Bala. As opposed to if you keep eating the yogurt and you're not doing anything to combat against the effects of the yogurt, then it will keep progressing. So that's why those symptoms start to get worse and worse and worse. And that's how they get bigger and bigger and bigger. So these factors are multiple things. Sometimes the factor can be your diet, your lifestyle, and also things like the season. That's the most general way to describe it. The factors that either work in your favor or against you. In your favor is here, because this is you. This is the person. And work against you is the roga, or the disease. So even in that situation, diet and lifestyle doesn't mean that it's only for a healthy person. It does help. It does help even in a disease state. But what determines of how effective it is in a disease state is how far along it has progressed. So, for instance, if you catch it right here, diet is obviously going to fix it, right? Or even if you catch it here, going for a run will fix it, because it isn't strong enough. There isn't enough of actual, it isn't strong enough, right? The stronger it gets, the more factors, the more nidanas that are feeding into it. This is basically what it's growing and getting stronger, right? Okay? So it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And by your diet and lifestyle, if it is something that works against that, then it will help to negate it. So it doesn't get stronger. So if, for instance, it is at this stage, if it is already at the disease stage, by the time you see the person comes to you, and you're starting it here, diet and lifestyle will only help, but not get rid of. That's the reason why when you have this stage, why diet and lifestyle does not help. It may help to reduce the intensity of the symptoms, but it doesn't get rid of the disease. Why? Because the disease is so strong. The disease is stronger than just the intervention of diet and lifestyle and season. Why? Because it has already gone through so many stages, and you're seeing the person here. So though these are constant, these are always going to be there. These are there every single day. You can't negate or you can't get rid of your diet or your lifestyle or the season. These are constants. However, if you're at this stage where the disease is this big, then this can't help to get rid of it. It can only maybe help to prevent it from getting any worse. Or it can just help to keep it at status quo. if you help, if you intervene. But that sometimes this isn't enough. And if this isn't enough, that's when we need to be even more aggressive. So even a more aggressive can come in the form of diet. So for instance, spices comes under the realm of diet. We use it medicinally, but it's a diet, right? But how we're using it is for a specific targeted purpose of trying to go back that way. Okay? That make sense?
So what I'm realizing is that I think the questions you ask, obviously your intake form has to be specific, and that they have to be open enough to be able to tell you all this, because otherwise you're kind of shooting in the dark, no?
Well, they're not really specific either, because even what I'm describing here is still general.
Yeah, that's true.
It's still general. So what you have to do, what really helps is when you do an intake, is talk to the person and you let them fill it out at that time. If you let them fill it out ahead of time, they come in with their own ideas because they don't know what you're looking for. You know what you're looking for. For instance, a person isn't going to be able to tell you what these other Vata factors are. They're only going to tell you they're constipated, and that too if they tell you they're constipated, because some people think that going once every 4 days is normal, and that's not considered constipation, right? So they're not going to say that. So you're the one who has to ask that. You have to ask, how frequently do you go to the bathroom? Is it once a day? Is it once every 2 days? You need to ask that question. So those are the basic ones that is given like in Ashtavidya Pariksha. Those are basic must-have questions, right? From that question, then you can ask the other questions. That's where it gives the leeway. It's sort of, then you go to leading questions. But those are givens that you have to ask. Because what that's doing is giving you the basic understanding of what, giving you like a basic picture. Okay, this is what's happening in this person right now. This is where the functions are going. This is how the body's working or not working. And then you start to dig further because it's already giving you an idea, right? But the idea may not necessarily be so clear. So you ask more questions, like for instance, you look for the other Vata functions and you start to tick off yes or no. So then you'll ask, do you have any issues with breathing? Or do you have any issues with your sleep? Do you find that you wake up in the night? Do you find that you have any gas or bloating? Do you get frequent headaches? How many times have you seen somebody who's constipated has headaches? All the time. So these are all things that
Not that they teach you that in medical school.
No. Not that they teach you that, diet even impacts the way whether you're constipated or not.
Well, yeah, the nutrition
No.
is not part of the training, but just when I think about those incredibly constipated patients, that would be my thought after I studied Ayurveda. So they're having headaches. Oh God, let me tell you about the headaches. So it totally makes sense, and that connection doesn't exist in allopathy.
Because again, we're looking at the person as a whole system. It's not segregated just the digestive system or just the circulatory system, or maybe the circulation has something to do with respiration, but those two have a direct correlation. The other ones don't necessarily. Or for the digestive system having an effect on the endocrine system, not really. But in Ayurveda, we're looking at the person as a whole. Even in the doshas, yes, the doshas have domains, but they're not restricted to those domains. Vata, its domain is here, but it does function here as well. Pitta has a domain here, but it does a function here as well, right? So there are no lines. There are no lines. No lines and no numbers. Okay? So that in itself is going to make it a little bit harder, but the faster you accept the fact that there are no lines and no numbers, the easier it'll be to accept this or to understand this. If you're trying to fit them in these constricted little boxes, then they don't fit in. Like, how do you fit Vata into a box? How do you do that? You could maybe do it with Pitta or Kapha, but you can't fit Vata into a box. Nobody puts baby in a box. So it's really hard. It's really hard to conceive of that. And another reason why, again, goes back to the fact that these aren't things that can be perceived, and because they're not perceived, it's not necessarily that they don't exist. Okay. So the easiest way to understand or to pick up on this information is talk to your clients. So you have like your basic format, and I'm going to share with you the client intake form that I use, and we're going to use that as a template for when you guys want to talk about your clients, or if you have someone that you have seen or some case that you would like to discuss. We'll try to fill it out in that format, and then we'll discuss it, because it goes a lot easier. And also it'll give you an idea as to, again, what questions to ask. It's not actually my format. I got it online, but I really like the flow of how the questions came, and it's a very nice, it creates a really nice organized picture. Now, it may be organized, doesn't mean it has created lines, but it's organized. It creates a very clear idea. So in that, even with that also, sometimes I go off. I may ask more specific questions. That becomes just a template. But you have, in that, you ever notice like you start talking to someone and then they're like, oh, so I also have the symptom. I don't know if it's really related, but I have like, sometimes I get this dry things on my elbows, or like I have this itching on the back of my head. And it's not really, it's not all the time, but sometimes I get it. Or like sometimes in the spring, I get really bad, like really bad allergies, and I get like itchy eyes. And I just thought it was seasonal allergies. I didn't think it's a big deal, but I do get them. So and the more you talk with them, the more they're going to start telling you. As opposed to if you let them fill it out ahead of time, they create the picture that you're seeing. You're not creating the picture that you're seeing. Okay? So that in itself adds a whole other dimension as to what you're gaining from your client, what you are trying to see. Because again, they don't have a training in Ayurveda and what you want to know. You know what you're looking for. They don't know what you're looking for. So they're only going to tell you what they think is important. But you need to look for those keys. And again, by understanding, the good thing is our classical texts have given us a lot of information. If a person has this kind of disease, these are the signs and symptoms. These are the purva rupas. This is what happens before it becomes a disease. This is what happens when it becomes a disease. This is what happens when it gets even more aggravated. All of that they've given us. So it's really for us to kind of almost, actually, there was one person said that we could even create this as a database. This might work for you. Create like a database and start to plug in, or even like tick mark all of the factors and see what kind of picture it creates. Because it is kind of like that. It does have an idea. It's a different sort of idea, but it does have a very massive, you start off with all of these things that are given, and then you start getting more specific, more specific, more specific until it creates a very clear, specific idea, right? So it does have that. The only thing is we need to first know what we're starting with. What are the givens? And then we start to concentrate from there. Okay? Yeah, go ahead.
I did a program last year where a lot of the work that we did as a group was to come up with, quote, I guess, an elegant storyline, like a storyline that's simple and it makes sense. And one of the things that I recognized was the story kind of looks different depending where you're sitting, right? And so if the classics have given us these lists of things, so these are Purva Rupa for such and such, these are Rupa for such and such, how is it that we still end up with different stories when we're looking at the same whole person? Or like, do you agree that different people will come up with different stories based on their life experience?
Yes.
Even though the classics are very specific about what is what? Yeah?
Yes,
Okay.
because they're specific but general at the same time.
Awesome. Okay.
You'll find You'll find I'll use a lot of oxymorons as we talk.
It's kind of life in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's what you said to me when I said about asked about the database thing.
Yeah,
Was that, yeah, and the same picture will have
exactly. It does, I mean, we start off the thing, but again, it's the perception.
Right.
And so, for instance, if as health counselors, you'll create a certain perception. As a practitioner, you'll create a certain perception. As a Ayurvedic Vaidya, you'll create a certain perception. My teachers, they'll create a certain perception because their knowledge, their experience, each person's experience is what. Now, it's not to say either one is wrong. It's basically looking at what you're trying to do. Now, the more fine-tuned that skill of perception becomes, which is basically what you do in clinical skills and clinical practice, is you fine-tune that method of perception and picking up on things, right? Because even in now, like you said, in diagnosis, it's very finite from a Western perception. But in ours, it's infinite because there can be infinite number of causes for some one thing to have an effect. Now, that can seem very overwhelming, but so it doesn't mean you have to know every single cause out there, even if you don't know all of them. It's okay. What you do look for, that's the reason why in Ayurvedic classical text they say, even if you don't have a name, doesn't mean you can't understand it. Though there are infinite number of diseases, there are infinite number of things that come up. There are an infinite number of diseases that have now been named, that are new diseases that never existed before because of our change in lifestyle and change of our society and all of that. But we can still, the basic fundamental things are still there. You're still made out of the 5 elements. You still have a mind. You're still eating food. You still have certain activities. And you can still understand the functioning of the body through doshas, right? So if you don't know everything, it's okay. You're never going to know everything. That's okay. But what you can understand is these basic things. And from understanding how it's functioning, even in that, it's going to lead to a deeper perception of how to be able to create that picture. So in Charaka, he says this also. If you can't name a disease, if it's not described in my text or in any of the other texts, what you do look for is the doshas. And in the aggravation or change in the doshas, you have the guna, the karma, and the matra, or the qualities, the action or function, and the quantity. These are 3 aspects of how the doshas can get aggravated. Okay? So for instance, you know what the qualities are associated with each dosha, right? You also know what the functions of each dosha is, right? You also know that there's a certain quantity. Now, it's not necessarily a measurable quantity, but you know, for instance, if there's aggravated kapha or there's too much of kapha, you know what the signs and symptoms are. Or if there's less kapha, what the signs and symptoms of that is. Just like if vata is aggravated, there's too much of vata, what that indicates. Or if vata is less or hypofunctioning, what that also indicates. These are things that you do know, right? So this is what we look for. And how much of this is aggravated, or whether it's all 3 of these, or 1 of this, or 2 of these, the permutation of this is actually what helps to determine what our intervention will be. So whether we have a name or we don't have a name, we can still put it in this category. So even understanding this also will help you to get a better idea. And even understanding this also will be able to help the person who you're trying to change, create that change. Okay? So for instance, if you know which qualities of the dosha is aggravated, you use the opposite quality, right? If you know which function is affected, then you do something to induce the proper, adequate functioning. Okay? If you know it's the quantity, then you do something to reduce the quantity. If the quantity is too much that it can't be reduced, that's when you have to push it out of the body, which is called Shodhana, or more commonly Pratyakara. That's actually when it's indicated, when there is too much quantity of doshas. At all other levels, if it is not too much of quantity, then it can be pacified within the body. But when the quantity of dosha is so much that you cannot pacify it within the body, then it needs to be thrown out of the body. And that's when Shodhana is indicated. So which method of Shodhana you use is the closest orifice, or according to which dosha it is, the closest orifice to get it out. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So this is sort of the basics of what we look at in the digestive system. And in this particular module, what we're going to look at is how digestion is basically the initial stages. It's sort of like your baseline for what determines what happens next. Okay? So for instance, you eat food, right? That's a daily constant. We have to eat food to survive. What are the 3 pillars of life? Maybe remember. I'm not quizzing you. The 3 pillars of life is food, yes. Food, sleep, and sex. Ahara, nidra, and it's actually brahmacharya, but it is typically termed as abrahmacharya. The reason why it is actually brahmacharya. Okay? The reason why, because sex, if done for the purpose of progeny, which is the main purpose it's for, if it is done for the purpose of recreation or for progeny, then it is still considered as brahmacharya. If it is done for any purpose apart from that, then it is considered as abrahmacharya. So typically, now in our present context in society, it's easier to say it as abrahmacharya than brahmacharya. But even that brahmacharya in this context has a particular meaning of what is still constituted as brahmacharya. Okay? So in the classical text, if you go back to the shloka, it actually says brahmacharya. Ahara, nidra, brahmacharya. But it's easier to understand it as abrahmacharya because in our present day and age, it's hard to tell someone that you can only have sex if you're going to have children, otherwise don't have it. They're not going to accept that. Okay? So, abrahmacharya. But even in that abrahmacharya also, there is certain regimen that can be used for keeping a healthy lifestyle, as opposed to the excessive use of that, which can lead to issues. Okay? So, ahara is the first one. And in that, ahara is sort of like the building block for where we start off from. So what you are what you eat. Yes, you are what you eat. So what it is that we're eating, and how is that then being broken down? And then how does your body absorb that? And how does your body then utilize that? So from there, it's not only for the purpose of nutrition, but it's also, what we can say is, it helps to nourish other factors in the body, which then are healthy to carry out their functions. So it's not just for the purpose of nourishment, but it's also for the purpose of regulating all the other functions of the body. Because if the other aspects or the other dhatus are not nourished, they cannot carry out their functions either. And the dhatus have multiple functions. Each dhatu is like a system on its own, right? So the rasa dhatu is a system on its own. The rakta dhatu is a system on its own. The whole system. Mamsa dhatu, we say it's muscle tissue, but there's muscle tissue all over your body, and it has a particular function. It's like the muscular system, right? So if that isn't nourished, it's going to affect that whole system. So that's why, again, your food and the process of digestion and nourishment is so essential, because it is the basis for what determines what happens next. Okay? So you can, if you're healthy, you're starting off healthy and you're eating healthy food and it's breaking down properly and nourishing, then you maintain that state of health, right? If you're healthy and you start eating food that isn't either not, the food is not healthy or the process of breaking down is not healthy, then that can then start to permeate through. So it can be either a one-time thing, like for instance, after your Thanksgiving meal, or it can be a habitual thing of constantly daily eating foods that are not good for you, that then affects the function, that then affects the process itself, and starts to trickle down and affect all other systems. So this is the reason, again, why we start off with the digestive system, because it is the basis. Another reason why is, in Ayurveda, everything that we advise is, again, aimed at balancing the Agni. Everything that we induce or we advise them to take is through the oral route, therefore also affected by the Agni. We don't have intravenous stuff. Everything is through the mouth. So therefore, it does come in contact with the Agni. So therefore, it's again very essential. Okay? Any questions? No? Make sure and let me know what time it is. Okay, and we're going till 8:30, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So we're looking at digestion. So Agni, do you all remember, and we'll go over this again tomorrow because we'll talk more detailed again about Agni and the functions of Agni. But in the process of digestion or Agni, what does Agni do? What is Agni responsible for? So Agni has multiple functions. Agni is responsible, of course, for digestion. But remember, Agni is the Agni that is located in the stomach is just one aspect of the functions of Agni. Agni is primarily one of the 5 elements, right? It is one of the 5 elements. So basically, there is Agni in every single cell in your body. Everything that has that is physical matter, everything that exists outside and inside of you has Agni. It has all 5 elements. Without those 5 elements, you cannot have a physical form. Okay? So every single matter, every single cell in the body has all 5 elements, including Agni. Okay? So this Agni has multiple functions. That Agni is responsible, the one that we're looking at primarily is the one in their stomach, the Jatara Agni. Okay? So Jatara is stomach. And the Agni present in the Jatara is known as the Jatara Agni. This Jatara Agni is really crucial and essential and important because this Agni can help to regulate all of the other Agnis. So we know that there are other Agnis that are there for each one of the Dhatus, that is 7 Dhatu Agnis. And we have 5 Bhuta Agnis, or 5 Agnis for the 5 elements. So what does that mean? You have 5 Agnis for the 5 elements, but then you have Agnis in each one of the cells that also have 5 elements. So why is there Agnis and more Agnis, right? So basically what that's describing is you have the food that you consume, or the liquids that you consume, or anything that you consume needs to be broken down, right? So it's broken down it's the major separation, the broken down part of it is happening with the Jatara Agni. The 5 elemental Agni, or the Bhuta Agni, is responsible for separation of the elemental components in your food. So it's basically like you see in digestion, in your stomach, the components of food start to get separated, starts to get churned and broken down. You have your carbohydrates, you have your fats, you have your proteins. They start to break down and become in an easier absorbable form, right? Somewhat of a similar thing. Instead of terming it or naming it as carbohydrates and proteins, we're calling them as 5 elements. So the elemental composition of your food starts to get broken down or separated, but it's still in a gross form of all mixed together in one media of the chyme or ahara rasa. Ahara is food, and rasa means like a liquid. So it is the liquefied food. Ahara rasa also means it is the essence of the food. So your food that you eat, you break it down, you chew it, and then it goes to your stomach, gets churned and broken down even more. And so then it is then broken down to a subtle form where it's starting to release the essence of the food. So what the quality of this ahara rasa is, whether it's properly broken down or not, is again determined by the Jatra Agni. Okay, so for instance, we talk about, there's different variations of your Jatra Agni. Sometimes it can be very high, which is Tikshna Agni. Sometimes it can be very low, which is Manda Agni. Sometimes it can be high and low, which is Vishama Agni. And then sometimes it can be properly balanced, which is Sama, right? So depending on what the intensity of the Agni is what really helps to determine how properly this ahara rasa is formed. So for instance, if you put food into a blender, right, and you have only 2 minutes or only 30 seconds to blend up this food, that's your time limit. And then after that, it has to move on. So you have 30 seconds in this blender. The food that you put in depends on what speed you put the blender on, determines how well or how broken down that food gets, right? So if you put it on really high, it gets completely mushed and pulverized. If you put it on really low, it gets chunky, but not necessarily pulverized. If it's in the medium, then it's in the appropriate amount of pulverized. If it's not present at all, then it's not at all pulverized. Or if there is something stuck in the blender, in the blades, and you turn it on, then the food doesn't get pulverized. And what is that thing stuck in the blades? It's ama, right? And how does that get formed? When stuff literally gets stuck to the blade, which is exactly like what ama does. It sits in the medium, in between, in the way of the Agni, or in the way of the blender to break down the food. So this process is really important for us to see and regulate. And we can regulate it. Sometimes you can do simple things. If there is no ama, you can do simple things to keep that Agni going. If there is ama, then you first have to get rid of the ama. And ama isn't something that you can actually push out of the body. And I know that seems very contradictory to what you may have heard before. But you cannot expel ama out of the body. The only way to get rid of ama is to digest it. You ever try to push out, now this again sounds kind of disgusting, but if you have that same blender with stuff stuck to the blades, if you try to flush it out with, say, cold water, or if you try to take it out, does it come out? It needs something hot, like hot water, to dissolve it, and then it can come out, right? What that's doing is dissolving it. Only if it is dissolved, then it can come out. The same thing with ama is, the only way to get rid of ama is actually to digest it. After you digest it, whatever you want to take out can come out. If that's there, it won't come out. It'll just block. It'll get transferred from one place to the next, but it doesn't fully come out. So what it does is just creates another layer, or like an extended coating. So ama, the only way to get rid of ama is to digest it. That's the reason why they have the term dipana and pachana. Dipana means to increase the Agni. Pachana means to digest. What you're digesting is not just your food, it's also you're digesting ama. So what you literally do is you burn off the ama. Once that ama is burned off, then the Agni rises again. And then it can do the same thing of blending the food. and breaking that up.
Free fly is not the answer to push down.
No.
Okay.
And this is the reason why you ever notice like some people who have constipation and they take Triphala, it doesn't help. Now do you see why? There is it's like you were saying before, you know, you're looking at symptoms and you're asking them to take things, but it's almost like throwing things in the dark because you're not exactly sure where it's supposed to go or what it's supposed to do. What we're looking at is exactly why the effect is being caused. What's the cause for that effect? If someone is constipated, what is causing the constipation? That's the first question you should ask. Not what should I do for this effect, it's what caused the effect. If you can figure out what caused the effect, then you know exactly what you need to do to get rid of it. So it's more of really focusing. You're still looking at the big picture. You're still looking at it as a whole, but you're focusing in exactly where the problem is. Even if the problem seems to be really big and spread out and throughout the whole body, it still would have started somewhere. And for the most part, it starts right there. That's where it starts. That is also the reason why in almost every single treatment, any intervention, the first and foremost thing you do, increase the effort. And this you're going to see again and again and again. I'm going to sound like I am just repeating myself over and over and over again, but you're going to start to see why I'm repeating myself over and over and over. Because no matter what happens, this is the major causative factor for why disease occurs. Because remember, this is what determines baseline. This is what determines whether a person's body is built properly or not. So you can, what Charika says about increasing Agni, and that's the cornerstone for treatment, is true. If you can help to fix this, that in itself is getting rid of the cause. Because the cause of the problem started, the root cause of the problem started with a problem with the Agni. Something that is affecting the Agni. What that thing is, we determine. But what we first need to do is, again, increase the Agni. If we increase the Agni is strong, then whatever has happened after the Agni was suppressed, that's the effect. Once we increase the Agni, the effect is then all we have to deal with. It's kind of like a churn mill. If the Agni is low, whatever process happened to cause a deviation or cause a problem, it's consistently churning because you're consistently eating. So every time you eat, you're adding to the problem. You eat, adds to the problem. You eat, adds to the problem. Right? So the problem is already there and it just keeps getting worse and worse. So what do? Do you work with this problem when it's still doing this? How can you get rid of this problem if this is consistently happening? So sometimes what you do is if you do something like this, like the Triphala, it may help for a day or two, but then it comes back again because the mill is still going. The process is still happening. The cause is still there. And if the cause is still there, the effect will be there.
Do you find that sometimes it's hard to get to the cause of if someone's had an issue for a really long time, like issues with colon issues in childhood, and then Vishnu and always changing symptoms, is it sometimes challenging to get to the cause?
It is. Sometimes it is. And sometimes that's why what we would do is there's multiple ways to increase the Agni. You can do something as simple as drink hot water and ramen to increase the Agni. You can do something a little bit more stronger, like taking Trikatu. Or you can do something even more stronger, like take a Ingwashtaka, which is what we're going to make. Or you can take something even stronger, like some other formulas. Or you can do something even stronger. So depending on how chronic it is, depending on how bad it is, that's what determines how aggressive we need to be. But even in very chronic stages, we still, that even then also, we still have to start with the other. So we have, like, for instance, we've seen clients, patients in India in college. We used to get a lot of neurological disorders, neurological and rheumatology. So that was like the maximum number of cases we would get. And we had patients who would come in who were who after a stroke were paralyzed or had like paraplegia or hemiplegia for 10 years, sometimes 12 years. We had cases of people who had psoriasis. We had one man who had psoriasis for about 25 years. It's almost his whole body. And in his village, they actually banned him. They sent him away banished him from his village because they say that psoriasis is a disease caused due to sin. If you've done some bad action, that's why you end up getting skin disorders. So they're saying he got this because he's a bad person, so they banished him from his village. And he got so used to living outside of his village that it was very hard for him to be in the hospital amongst people because he got used to living by himself. He was not happy to be around people. And so even in this such a chronic case as well, of course his line of treatment or the stages of treatment were very aggressive. But even in that case too, it started off first with increasing the Agni. And only after increasing the Agni were we able to do it. Because whatever intervention we want to do still has to go through the stomach. It still has to go orally. And if the Agni is not there, it can't be broken down. It can't then get to the dhatus. That's the pathway for it to get to the dhatus. So even in those chronic conditions as well, same thing, increase the Agni. So for this reason, again, this is why it is the cornerstone. And the best way to prevent disease is cell cure. Again, another reason why they say that the most essential thing for you to do, if you can manage to maintain your Agni, that in itself is responsible for strength and longevity. If you can, that's why it's something so important that it should be guarded very sacredly to keep your Agni. And it is the most essential thing that we ignore on a daily basis. How many of us, we do it? How many of our clients do it? We are in a society where it is completely acceptable. We had this conversation last time where previously it was, you never skipped a meal or you always tried to eat fresh cooked food. Those were the normal things to do. Now we have created a new normal where it is completely okay to eat once a day or eat when you have the time or eat or have a juice shake in the place of a meal or a protein shake in place of a meal. That is completely normal. Or eat a yogurt when you're hungry, or eat a cheese cube when you're hungry. That is completely normal. And telling someone other than that to go back to the way it was before, that is abnormal. So it's, in many ways, it's retraining everything. And so what you guys have done till now of creating this lifestyle and creating this new routine is essential. But sometimes what happens is if that effect has gone on too long, what the routine does is it sets you up to help to again increase the Agni. It will help. Sometimes it may not be enough to get rid of that effect, or it may not be effective enough to completely increase the Agni because there's so much stuff that is suppressing it. That's the reason why people who have a routine and who have developed this particular lifestyle still have problems. And we get, like I said, we get people from all ranges of that, different ranges of self-esteem. Some people who have in a mild state, some people who have a chronic state, some people who have a very healthy lifestyle. You know, you have a lot of, if you have a practice in a yoga studio, you're gonna come across this a lot. And when I see clients at Down Under, this is what I see a lot, because it's at a yoga studio. So people are familiar with the yoga lifestyle. So they already have a routine, and it's fairly healthy, but they still have problems. And why do they still have problems? Because they're still fitting into that new normal of it's okay. So I can do yoga every day, and that's okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean I need to eat 3 times a day. I'm doing yoga, I'm fine. Yoga's gonna take care of all of it. And you see that all the time. Or I do power yoga, so that I'm more healthy. I do hot yoga. I do yoga and sweat, so I'm even more healthy.
Now there's yoga.
I saw that.
It's beer yoga.
Yeah.
Which lends a whole new meaning to the phrase, here, hold my beer, watch this.
Yeah. I just saw that last night.
I didn't saw
Actually
that.
online, and I thought, I'm not even gonna read this story. The picture's bad enough. I don't have anything. There's nothing to be gained, so.
But what Hillary said is why we need you all, because Ayurveda will head in the exact same direction. Ayurveda is heading in the exact same direction.
Here it's all spot
It-
treatment.
It is.
Unless you find the right people. to do
It is.
It's not
And-
really false or
yeah.
spot treatment.
Wait, in
I-
Canada, they're like, what?
Ayurveda originally was marketed and taught here in the US as a spa therapy. And that's why till now, it has been considered so much of a spa-like therapy. It's now, the evolution is happening, where people are understanding that it's not just a spa therapy. Or you have more people who are interested in learning more. Just like in yoga, you wanted to learn more. You went to teacher training. And as you did teacher training, you understood that there's a whole lot more to yoga than just poses. And then you learn some more. And you're like, wait a minute. This isn't yoga at all. There's a whole other dimension to this. So what is yoga? And you start learning about that. The same sort of cycle that yoga has already gone through and is still going through is the same cycle that's happening with Ayurveda. It what first got introduced as a spa therapy, it's all these different treatments, you put oil, it smells good, it looks good. Those of you who went to India knows it's nothing like that.
No.
You get a great big reality check when you sit on that wooden table. Yes, slapped around, whap, and then you try to get off the table and you probably slip and fall a little bit, or you hold on to something. That's what real Panchakarma is like. That's what authentic Panchakarma is like. And it is not pretty, and it is definitely not spa-like. So even when you go there and you ask them for Panchakarma, they're going to give you what they know, and that's what it is. So, and then you're like, wait a minute, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I
There's a
think.
bunch of karma centers that are catering to Westerners though, and they're going that spa.
They are.
Of course they are.
They are. It's like if you could have beer yoga, why can't you have, you know,
Beer
I-
Panchakarma?
yeah,
Panchakarma.
lavender oil Panchakarma. Why not?
I heard of a place in Kerala that has the table with a box of food, the table with a pick of food, and the table with a cup of food. Pick your dosha and go eat there.
Yeah, it's just like the Ayurvedic restaurants, which in one way it's kind of a good idea. How do you know which one to eat?
Right?
How do you know which one to eat? Do you take a quiz before? Or do you like take a quiz and then, or they give you a specific menu? And even when you're taking the quizzes, you take it with a grain of salt, because how many of you, when you first took the quiz, picked the things that you liked and left out the ones that you didn't? I know I did. There was a quiz. I think there's a quiz at the end of the Red Book. And when I first did it, I picked off the things that I like or that I think that I am. And I picked those, and I just left out the rest because I didn't really want to put that, or I didn't want to be very honest about the fact that I do have a short temper every now and then. And I am very pittaja, and that's part of my prakriti. I don't want to put that in. I don't want to tell people I have a short temper. I do not have a short temper.
No, you don't.
No, I don't. I do not.
Are you telling me?
Nobody can tell me otherwise. So exactly. So you pick and choose what needs to be, more preferable. That's another reason why you don't let your clients fill out these quizzes, because they pick and choose, and that doesn't necessarily represent what's really happening. Also, how do they tell the difference between what is their normal and what is the abnormal? You know the difference. You can pick up on the difference. You can pick up on the difference between what is a healthy normal pitta and what is an abnormal unhealthy pitta. Same way, normal healthy kapha and abnormal unhealthy kapha. Just looking at a person and seeing them being bulky doesn't mean they're kapha. Looking at a person and seeing that they're thin doesn't mean that they're vata. Doesn't mean that that is their prakriti. It could very well mean that that is their vikriti. And that is extremely common in our society because we have so many lovely kids with eating disorders. So how do you know? If we take everything with that face value of, oh, well, it's this, oh, well, it's this, oh, well, it's this, or they fill it out, yes, I am thin, so I must be vata. Not adding the fact that there's no way in that list that says, am I anorexic, or am I bulimic, or do I have an eating disorder? That's not on the list. So instead, they're going to pick what's on the list. It doesn't represent what they are. That's the whole point of changing the perception and looking deeper. Being able to identify whether it's a normal or abnormal. And that's what helps us to then determine what our intervention should be, what are the stepwise or our treatment plan, what are the stages and steps that we have, and how we want to approach that. Now, this is another thing, understanding that intervention comes in steps, because this is another issue with the fact that we read these studies of research that has been done in Ayurveda says ashwagandha is good for this. So which means if you have this, take ashwagandha and it'll work fine. Will it work fine? No. If you have this problem, take turmeric and it will get rid of your problem. Will it? Why won't it? And the reason I'm saying this, and I know it seems very contradictory, I may be bursting somebody's bubble and I'm sorry, but what I want you to do is question everything, including me. Question what is happening and try to find out exactly what the cause is for that. Again, ask the question, what is the cause for this effect? Will the turmeric get rid of the cause? Will the turmeric affect the cause? If the turmeric is ideal for getting rid of the cause, then great, yes, it will work. But if the turmeric is not what is going to get rid of the cause, or if the turmeric is not the initial step in your treatment plan for that effect, then it's not going to work. And why I say that is because, again, the initial step is increase your Agni. Because if you have no Agni and you're taking turmeric, is it going to get digested? Just like the food isn't getting digested, the turmeric isn't any different. It's not going to get digested. It is a partial digestive, but it is not an ideal digestive. Turmeric is not, if we were to pick out all the spices that we have and classify them into which ones increase your Agni and which ones don't. How many of you have ever heard of turmeric increasing your Agni? It doesn't. Yeah. Black pepper, ginger, chipotle. These are digestive spices. This is the reason why, maybe this is also the reason why in Indian cooking, ginger is an essential. You cannot cook without ginger. Even in the sweets, the ginger is there. I was thinking, even Indian sweets are actually healthy for you. My insane logic is because even in the sweets, there's a digestive there. That's true. Yeah. Even in the sweets, there's a digestive. So you can eat a sweet, but it'll somewhat induce, okay, you got to break it down. You can have this, but it has to break down.
So I have a question.
Mhm.
Please tell me if I'm asking.
No, go ahead.
So, having tried all these different levels of increasing Agni, take Trick-or-Two or even Quickly, start getting hyperactivated. Right? So my question would be, how do you know how much AMA are you trying to get rid of, if that's what you're trying to do, or even if you're trying to increase just the ADME, forget about the AMA. It has to be stages then.
No, there has to be the appropriate method of increasing ADME. That's what we're going to look at. That's exactly what we're going to look at. No, that's a great question, because it means that you're processing and you're thinking of the next step. That's what questions are. It processes the information and gives you a question that leads you to the next step or the next level of that information. And this is what it is. So it's not just about increasing the ADME. It's about increasing the ADME in the appropriate manner for what is happening. So again, if I say increase ADME, then everybody should take Trick-or-Two and they should be fine, right? But well, like you said, how do you determine how much, or can you do this if it's a very chronic state? So for somebody who just had their Thanksgiving dinner and they are developing AMA the next day, what you do to increase their ADME is very different than what you do for the person who's had it for 20 years. And also, it differs according to what is actually presenting. If the person is presenting with a disorder that is Vataja, or that is Pittaja, or that is Kaphaja, because it's not just the Agni alone that is the problem. It's the Agni that originally started, and then it started to create an abnormality in something else. So what that something else is determined by, the person's Prakriti, which is kind of like it determines their risk factors. Okay, so if you're a Pitta Prakriti person, you have a higher risk factor for Pitta sort of diseases, right? These are things we know, right? So that's determined, that's your primary higher risk factor. So if you have a lower Agni, you are doing things or exposed to things that are more Pitta aggravating, then obviously you can have a lower Agni and a Pitta disease. You don't necessarily mean that all Pitta disease means Agni is also high. This is another thing that we're going to learn.
I was going to ask you that.
Yes. This is another thing we're going to learn, because Pitta and Agni are not exactly the same thing. Can anyone tell me the easiest way to differentiate between Pitta and Agni? Thank you. Yes. One is wet and one is dry. Because Pitta is made out of water and fire. It's not just fire alone. Whereas Agni is just fire alone. And in our notes, there's a chart where you see Pitta is wet. Pitta in its actual form is actually wet. It's in a liquid form. Whereas Agni is dry. It's in the form of fire, right? Fire moves upwards, right? Gravity. Whereas Pitta, being liquid, actually moves down. Right? If you ever notice why, if Pitta was equivalent to fire, then why would we say that Virechana or purgation is the best way to pacify Pitta, aggravated Pitta, or excessive Pitta? If it is moving, if it's fire, it should be moving upwards, right? But instead, we don't actually induce it to move upwards, we induce it to move downwards, because Pitta is different than fire. It's in the liquid form, so its natural movement is downward. So that's why by inducing purgation, we are trying to induce its natural method or form of moving downward. We are inducing it to move downwards.
Would you say Pitta was hydrochloric acid?
Very much so. That's just one aspect. That is the Pachaka Pitta. That is one type of.
And then the
Agni is Jatra Agni. And they're different.
nothing to do with the digestive enzymes or anything.
Now that's a good question, because if we were to really look at that, we can even say, to some extent, the functions of the enzymes are very similar to the functions of the Bhuta, because they have specific actions on specific types. Yes. So the Bhuta Agnis, and the Bhuta Agnis don't just work at the level of the stomach. The Bhuta Agnis work at every level of digestion, because everything that it is nourishing and then transforming to is again essentially 5 elements. So at every level of digestion, every level of metabolism, every level of assimilation, the Bhuta Agnis are working. Now, how do you explain that? Because it's a function that is not restricted to any one place, but it's functioning, it's working. We know that it's acting. It's the same way, like you say, you eat foods that are more airy in nature, and it enhances more of the airy quality of your body. Or not only just foods, liquids. I mean, a great example of this is carbonated water, which I don't know why you would want to carbonate water in the first place, but carbonated water. Carbonated water is basically water infused with air. And you drink that, and what does it do? It infuses the air in your body. That's why they end up very, very gassy. And then they drink this and then wonder, so I'm really gassy. I don't know why I'm so gassy. And so, well, what do you eat? What do you drink? How much fluids do you drink? Well, I drink, I maybe I could drink a little bit more water, but I do drink like 2 bottles of seltzer water. I really like that. It tastes better. I don't like the taste of water. Yep, seltzer water tastes better. And then they wonder why they're gassy.
So did you keep a straight face?
I really try very hard. And that's, again, some of the skills you develop in trying not to be judgmental. And we're not judging. We're not really judging. But it's just, you can automatically see the equation there. Yeah. This is definitely equaling this. This is the cause, this is the effect.
Yeah, it seems so obvious.
Exactly. Exactly. It's the perception. Our perception is looking at the cause and effect. Whereas looking at the cause and thinking, or looking at the effect and thinking, how are we going to get rid of the effect is a different perspective.
You also feel that the carbonated waters are absorbed less?
Yes.
There's still like dehydration that they I'm still drinking it.
And it just causes more dehydration and then more thirst, and they drink more and it causes further dehydration. That's why people who drink this habitually actually end up with dry skin. And they wonder, it's the same thing like any carbonated drink. So whether it's carbonated water or if it's soda or anything that's carbonated, you have less of the qualities of water in there and more of the qualities of air.
That's really interesting because carbonated water also leaches calcium out of the bones, which is lactic.
Exactly.
Mm.
So if we were to look at any one aspect and see how it affects the body, we can again trace it back to the dosha. We can again, even more specific, we can again trace it back to the 5. The Pancha Mahabhuta Siddhanta, or the 5 elemental theory, is one of the basic theories in Ayurveda. And everything, even all the herbs and the Agni and the reactions and all of that, we can actually all break it down to 5 elements. And looking at the permutations of these 5 elements and how these 5 elements are reacting with the other 5 elements. And what are the positive factors that influence the reaction of these 5 elements. But it's all, again, 5 elements. If it's dealing with physical matter, it's all 5 elements. So even that perspective, like I was saying, that the perception of the difference between, say, how I would perceive it or how my teachers would perceive it, my teachers would explain it in that, even at that level. They will say it back to the 5 elements. I had one teacher, my first class ever in Ayurveda, taught us about doshas in the perspective of quantum physics. And we are 17 and 18-year-olds sitting there in a very, very hot classroom listening to him talk to us about doshas and quantum physics, which at that age and at that maturity level just goes here. But now it makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. It's to see how there is a relationship of looking at what we have learned from the external and the reaction of different energies and how they influence each other. We can understand using that concept to understand what's in here and how these energy levels interact with each other. The macrocosm and the microcosm. And not limited to the Indian subcontinent. So quantum physics is not just in the Indian subcontinent. I'm assuming it's all over the world and all over the universe. So in that you can see these are universal concepts. And again, if we need to sharpen our skills in understanding that. Like, so explaining quantum physics to an 18-year-old may be a little bit beyond their level of understanding because they don't have that level of perception. But the more time you spend in it and the more you learn about it, afterwards it does start to make sense. Because you're investing time in learning and trying to understand it. So just like trying to explain to your clients about doshas. And I know this is something we do. We get very excited. And you're gonna find this happen after this course. You're gonna get very excited. And you're gonna wanna go back and explain all of this to your clients. And remember, they're just like 18-year-olds with quantum physics. You have spent this much time in learning about doshas and Agni and all of these things. They have it. So as much as you would love to explain all of this to them, they will not understand. They may not need this much of level of explanation. The main thing is you know, and the main thing is you can understand what's happening in them. And you need to then digest it or make it in an easily digestible form and deliver that to them so that they can understand what is appropriate for them. And for each person, it may be different. So, like, for instance, somebody who's never heard about Ayurveda before, to start off with some really basic things. For somebody who has a yogic sort of lifestyle and practice and they've already had a routine, you can be a little bit more detailed with them. Or for somebody who has absolutely no intention of doing this, and you can always tell by the way they talk, that they just want to come and get one herb or one spice or something or turmeric that they can take in place of this, and what you need to explain to them, if necessary, if you need to explain to them. Or you're going to need to give them what they want, or explain to them something that's going to be beneficial for them. That again is a skill you develop. You develop this, and it doesn't happen overnight. To tell you the truth, it took me a very long time. I remember graduating, and as soon as I graduated, I was 23 when we graduated. And I was praying I would get gray hair so that I'd look older than my age and that my patients would take me seriously. And so in order to look a little bit more mature, we would wear saris in the OP so that we don't look as young as we are. So we would wear saris and then we would have our white coats. We purposely put the stethoscope and everything. And the patients would come in and they'd take one look at us and be like, can you go call the doctor? So all of that, that happens. And we were all sitting there when we did have patients sitting across from us. We were scared out of our minds, had no idea what we were doing. We were trained, took 5.5 years of training, still had no idea what we were doing. Got very scared. And, asking questions, but kind of shivering at the same time. And then it took time, and it took a while, and it took practice, and time to get that confidence. And then you start to see more people. And then you start to see a pattern. Oh, well, if somebody has this, you see something common. Everybody has the same problem, but they're all doing the same thing. That's why they're all getting the same problem. And it may happen the same in men and women, but they're doing the same thing. And, oh, yes, I did read about this. This wasn't it. I do know about this. And that's how it keeps going. So that confidence, even in the confidence of being able to practice what you've learned. Now, all of you may have experience and practice in other systems or in other methods and other forms of therapy. But even when you're practicing Ayurveda, or even if when you're practicing this, because we're going at another level now, you may feel a little bit apprehensive. And that's okay. That's okay. It'll take time. You'll gain your confidence, you'll gain more experience, but don't let that fear stop you. Don't let that fear stop you, because you actually will end up knowing, you know much more than you give yourself credit. Even as we talk about all of this, when you go back, you'll be like, oh, I already knew this. So whatever I'm teaching you or telling you is actually stuff that you already know. But what I'm doing, or what we're doing in this course, is fine-tuning your perception. So now you can know specifically what to look for. Even though you knew all of this stuff before, you knew about doshas, you knew about seasons, you knew about Agni. But now we're going to look more specific as to what happens, or what is this, or what is that. And we're going to start to put them together. Okay? Any questions? Where are we in time?
8:26.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let you guys go 4 minutes early. A whole 4 minutes early. So we're going to meet back at 8:30 tomorrow.